When 29-year-old Jill Meagher disappeared in 2012, it didn't just spark a missing persons case. It ignited a national outcry. You see, Jill wasn't a stranger to new beginnings. She was originally from Termonfeckin, a small village in Ireland. Later, she moved with her family to Perth, Australia, before returning to Ireland for university. There, she earned her Bachelor of Arts from University College Dublin, which helped her land a job at RTE, Ireland's national broadcaster. In 2008, Jill met Tom Meagher. They fell in love, and the following year, the couple packed up and moved to Melbourne, Australia. Thanks to her background, Jill secured a position at the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Life was moving forward. She was in love, surrounded by family, building a promising career. Everything was on track. But that all changed on the night of September 21st, 2012. That evening, Jill went out with colleagues. They hit a few bars in Brunswick, eventually ending up at a place called Bar Etiquette on Sydney Road. Around 1:30 a.m., Jill left on foot, heading home. She called her brother on the way, and that call was the last time anyone ever heard her voice. By morning, her husband Tom realized she hadn't come home. He searched, he waited, he hoped. Then, he called the police. A missing persons case was opened, and searches began. 4 days later, Jill's handbag was found in an alley off Hope Street. Still, there were no solid leads. Until investigators reviewed CCTV footage from a boutique on Sydney Road. It showed Jill standing outside, talking to a man at 1:42 a.m., a man who had been pacing, watching, waiting. That man was soon identified as Adrian Ernest Bailey, a 41-year-old repeat offender, already out on parole for violent crimes. Crimes that, many believed, should have kept him behind bars. After hours of questioning, Bailey confessed. He had followed Jill, assaulted her, murdered her, and buried her body in a shallow grave outside of Melbourne. On September 27th, police recovered her remains. The nation was heartbroken, but that heartbreak turned to fury when it was revealed that Bailey had violated parole multiple times and was still roaming free. Jill's murder wasn't just tragic, it was avoidable. In April 2013, Adrian Bailey was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 35 years. But for Jill's family, for Tom, and for a grieving public, the sentence could never bring her back. Jill Meagher's story is a haunting reminder of how a system meant to protect can sometimes fail the very people who need it most. She was doing everything right. She should have been safe, but she never made it home. On a cold January morning in 2017, 20-year-old Birna Brjánsdóttir disappeared from one of the safest countries in the world, Iceland. She was smart, kind, and had a great sense of humor. She worked in a local fashion store, just a regular young woman, living life, going out with friends, and enjoying the moment. That night, after work, she and her co-workers went out dancing. They hit the clubs, laughed, danced, and Birna was seen getting up on stage, smiling, living life. By 2 a.m., most of her friends called it a night. But Birna? She stayed behind. She was having fun, and she wasn't quite ready to go home. She finally left around 5 a.m. It was freezing, 16 degrees Fahrenheit. But she didn't seem to mind. CCTV footage later showed her walking alone down the street, holding a falafel, clearly intoxicated, but still moving with purpose. She fumbled with her change, dropped a few coins, even bumped into a stranger on the sidewalk. But nothing seemed alarming. She was last seen walking past the Lebowski bar, and then she vanished. She never made it home. She didn't show up for her shift. Her phone was off. Her friend Maria grew worried. This wasn't like her. Calls were made. Her father hadn't seen her. Her mother hadn't either. A missing persons report was filed. Authorities believed she'd turn up. After all, it was Iceland. Crimes like this didn't happen here. But Birna's mother, Scylla, knew something was wrong. And when her emotional plea aired on national television, the country paid attention, and the investigation kicked into high gear. Surveillance footage was reviewed again, and that's when investigators noticed a red Kia Rio passing by right after Birna's last sighting. The police held a press conference, asking the public, "Do you recognize this car?" Soon, volunteers joined the search, and it was two of them, searching near the harbor, who found Birna's Doc Martens, her boots abandoned, wet. Then came more footage. That same red car seen near the docks at 6 a.m. A man gets out, boards a ship called the Polar Nanok. The car drives off. Police trace the car. It had been rented by Thomas Miller Olsen and Nikolai Olsen, crewmen on the Polar Nanok. The car was impounded, and inside, blood. Tests confirmed it belonged to Birna. The captain, hearing his ship was linked to the disappearance, turned the vessel back to port. Thomas and Nikolaj were arrested. Thomas admitted Birna had been in the car, but claimed he dropped her off. Yet, surveillance showed him buying cleaning supplies. His phone was off for 4 hours that morning, and his body, covered in scratches. On the ship, they found Birna's driver's license. Eventually, her body was discovered in the sea near a lighthouse, thrown away, just 20 years old. Nikolai was cleared of all involvement, but Thomas Miller Olsen was found guilty. He tried to shift the blame, but the evidence told the truth. He was sentenced to 19 years in prison. The case shook Iceland to its core, a nation with almost no violent crime. Suddenly faced with a brutal, senseless tragedy. But it also showed the power of community, of a mother's love, and the determination to bring justice, no matter how rare the crime. Birna Brjánsdóttir's story will never be forgotten. On a quiet evening in August 2019, in the small town of Waringstown, Northern Ireland, a man was found, slumped in his car at a local gas station. He wasn't asleep. He wasn't unconscious. He had been murdered. That man was Malcolm McKeown, a 54-year-old known to many as a feared figure in the criminal underworld. But who was he? Why was he targeted? And who pulled the trigger in one of Northern Ireland's most shocking gangland murders? Malcolm McKeown wasn't your average man. He had a long criminal past and was heavily involved in drug dealing and organized crime across Northern Ireland. He was also linked to loyalist paramilitary groups, the same kinds of organizations that took part in the violent political conflict known as the Troubles. But even after peace agreements were signed, Malcolm never stopped. He kept running drug operations, intimidating rivals, and using violence to keep control. Over time, he made a lot of enemies. And this wasn't the first time someone tried to kill him. Back in 1999, Malcolm survived an assassination attempt. He was shot but lived. That gave him a reputation, the man who couldn't be killed. But the criminal world was changing. Younger, more dangerous gangs were moving in, and it was becoming clear. Malcolm had targets on his back. August 19th, 2019. That evening, Malcolm stopped at Dewart's petrol station in Waringstown. Security cameras show him walking into the shop at 7:19 p.m. He bought something and walked back out to his silver BMW. Less than 1 minute later, a car is seen speeding away from the scene. Just minutes after that, a white Volkswagen Passat is found on fire in another town. This was no coincidence. At the gas station, a witness was filling up his car. 2 young boys ran over and said, "There's a man in that car. He's not moving." The witness walked over. The BMW door was wide open. Malcolm's leg was hanging out. He looked inside and saw Malcolm's lifeless body, shot 6 times. He was dead at the scene. Police rushed in. This wasn't just a murder. This was a hit. They quickly linked the burned-out Passat to the crime. Inside, they found a glove and a boiler suit. The glove had DNA. It matched a man named Jake O'Brien, a 30-year-old with a criminal record, but that wasn't all. Phone records began pointing to someone else, Andrew Martin, age 29. He had been Googling Malcolm McKeown's name, looking up gun terms, and even searched things like act of killing. That wasn't solid proof, but it showed intent. Their phones turned off during the time of the murder, a classic move to avoid GPS tracking. On top of that, CCTV captured 2 men running away from the area. Their size, their clothes, matched the suspects. So, why was Malcolm killed? The full answer may never be known. But investigators believe it came down to rivalries in the drug trade. Malcolm had just gotten out of prison just 12 days before he was murdered. Some say he was trying to take back control of his drug empire, stepping on the toes of younger, more ambitious gangs. Others believe he may have betrayed someone, or made a threat he couldn't back up. Either way, he had made enemies, and those enemies wanted him gone. Fast forward 2 years, and the trial began. It wasn't a jury trial, just a judge. In Northern Ireland, this is done for cases involving gangs, to avoid jury tampering. The evidence: CCTV footage, DNA from the glove, Google searches, phone data, witness statements, and the burned car. It all painted a clear picture. Jake O'Brien and Andrew Martin were found guilty of murder and of possessing the weapons used in the killing. Both men now face life in prison. 2 other men, Stevie Watson and Simon Smith, were also charged, but later cleared due to lack of evidence. The murder of Malcolm McKeown was one of the most chilling gangland hits in recent memory. A man once thought untouchable was taken out with cold, calculated precision. But behind the headlines is a deeper message. In the world of organized crime, there are no real friends, only allies. And betrayal, power, and revenge always catch up. In the end, no one stays untouchable forever. On November 9th, 2021, 27-year-old ILONA Golabek vanished from Wormgate in Boston, Lincolnshire, England. From the outset, detectives suspected foul play. ILONA was last seen minutes before midnight, wandering near Wide Bargate and Red Lion Street. She was wearing 3/4 black leggings and a large hooded sweatshirt with a yellow triangle on the front. Search parties scoured the streets, but found no sign of her. No witnesses stepped up. No clues were uncovered. Only one name kept surfacing: her boyfriend, 40-year-old Kamil Ranoshek. Suspicion grew. Detectives released CCTV footage of ILONA walking that night, hoping someone would recognize her or recall seeing them both. Meanwhile, 2 men were taken in for questioning. One was soon cleared, but Camille remained on investigators' radar. Then, 3 months later, the case took a gruesome turn. Investigators discovered several bags containing human remains in Wetamwe Country Park. DNA confirmed the remains, horrifically, belonged to Ilona. At trial, prosecutors laid out a chilling picture. That night, Ilona arrived home to find that Camille sitting on their couch, seething over her messages to other men on Tinder, and the fact she was apparently ending things and had given him 2 weeks to move out. They say he snapped. He killed her. Then, bafflingly, he waited 2 days before reporting her missing. Police allege that in the dead of night, he rode his bicycle to Wetamwe Country Park, dumped the bags, and returned home. The next day, he made that call to police. But by then, it was too late. His story? He'd been out drinking with a friend, he claimed, and only came home around 11 p.m. on November 9th. Yet, Ilona's phone last recorded activity at 11:46 p.m. that night, with no replies after that. The jury believed the prosecution. Camille Ranostek was found guilty and sentenced to at least 22 years in prison. A promising young woman, lost in a moment of jealous rage, buried in plastic bags in a quiet park under the cloak of night. If you were in Boston that November night, if you noticed anything unusual in the early hours of the 10th, please reach out to local authorities. Sometimes even the quietest places hold the darkest secrets. It was a quiet night in South Windsor, a suburb of Sydney, Australia. March 31st, 2015. But for a 23-year-old Brendan Vollmost, that night would mark the beginning of a chilling mystery. At around 10:30 p.m., CCTV footage captured Brendan arriving home in a friend's white station wagon. They pulled into the driveway. Fast. Something felt off. And within seconds, a group of unidentified men came charging onto the property in pursuit. Brendan and the driver leapt out of the car and ran toward the backyard, desperate to escape. Another passenger, frozen, was told to stay put. Then, they disappeared out of the camera's view. But what happened next was far worse than anyone could have imagined. While off camera, Brendan was viciously assaulted, then dragged back and forced into a white hatchback, possibly a Hyundai i30 or something similar. And just like that, he was gone. The case was taken over by Strike Force Orrender, and when investigators released the shocking CCTV footage, the public responded with tips, theories, and a lot of questions. But police made one thing clear. Brendan had been involved in drug dealing, and they believed this was a targeted abduction, likely linked to a deal gone wrong. Witnesses reported seeing a car speeding away on Cox Street that night, but no one could describe the driver or the men inside. However, investigators suspected something interesting, that the 2 cars may have collided during the attack. There might be damage on the hatchback's front driver's side panel. So they reached out to panel beaters, auto shops, even rental companies, hoping someone had seen that exact damage on a returned vehicle. Then, a disturbing discovery. Inside Brendan's shed, forensic teams found biological evidence, clear signs of violence. They believe the entire attack lasted no more than a minute before Brendan was taken. Eventually, 4 men were arrested. Jamie Tilley, 36, Jack Davies, 28, William Thomas, 28, and Mitchell Bentley, 27. All were charged in connection with Brendan's disappearance. They admitted to the assault. but denied killing him. They claimed self-defense, saying Brendan pointed a firearm at them and that he owed them money. The trial lasted 5 weeks, and after 3 weeks of deliberation, the jury couldn't reach a verdict. There wasn't enough proof to say Brendan had died, with no body, no physical evidence tying the group to a homicide. The case ended in a hung jury. Brendan Vollmost has never been found. No one knows where he is, or if he's even alive. For his family, every day is a silent waiting game. If you have any information about what happened that night, or where Brendan may be, please contact Crime Stoppers at 1-8003-33000. Michael McClain was just 29 years old. A kind-hearted young man from Stamford, Connecticut, living in Manchester, New Hampshire, with a bright future ahead. He had a degree in criminal justice, a stable job at a non-profit caring for children with autism, and friends who adored him. But on the night of April 20th, 2019, Michael went out for what should have been just a normal night. He never came home. That night, he joined a few friends at the Tropical Lounge nightclub. They laughed, danced, had a few drinks, until everything changed. A fight broke out between a woman Michael knew and someone he didn't. Michael stepped in, trying to defuse the situation, but the conflict spilled into the parking lot. It was about 1:30 a.m. Police were called. By the time they arrived, Michael was gone. His friends waited, searched nearby, but he had vanished into the night. 45 minutes later, they left, hoping he'd turned up elsewhere. At around 2 a.m., Michael made a disturbing phone call to his boss. He said someone was after him, more than one person. He didn't say who. Then the call ended. When his boss called back, there was no answer. A few minutes later, Michael sent 3 strange text messages to a neighbor. Help, LOL hour. What stood aloof? Eldridge bro. Were they autocorrect errors? A desperate cry for help? No one knows. Surveillance footage later captured him near a McDonald's on East Hollis Street around 2:30 a.m. Then he was seen exiting a parking garage at Riverlanding Apartments. And then, nothing. Michael McClain was never seen again. His car was found parked where he'd left it that night. He never returned to it. His cell phone stopped pinging around 2 a.m. near the McDonald's, and it's been silent ever since. His family searched desperately, made public appeals, called his name into the dark, but no trace has ever been found.
I just need y'all to please give him back. You're breaking my family.
A family broken by heartache since April 20th, the night Michael McClain was last seen.
This is a place where you do not want to be. Sleep, don't know what that's about. You just running on empty right now.
Michael's family says he lived in Manchester for the last several years, working at Easter Seals. He was reported missing after a night out at the Tropical Lounge in Nashua. His father, Edward, says he'd never take off without letting anyone, especially his mother, know that he's okay.
Michael had a lot going for him. Michael still has a lot going for him. So for someone to just up and disappear, this is not Michael.
Hundreds of missing posters like this one handed out to volunteers to be put up around Nashua and Manchester in the hopes of sparking someone's memory.
We have faith that my son is still out there. We want to bring Michael back home.
Nearly 5 months later, the family is pushing for the public to come forward, frustrated with the information they've received so far from investigators.
I just need them to do more. They just need to communicate more with the family.
Michael's aunt speaks directly to the people who were with him that night.
You were with him. You have to know something. You can't say you don't know anything because that's impossible. If this is your friend, you need to go to the police and you need to tell them something. We want answers. That's all. We want answers, whether he's coming back complete whole to us or whether we have to give him the proper going away. We want Michael back, and we're not going to stop until we get him back.
Nashua police say this is an open and active investigation. In Nashua, Siobhan Lopez, WMUR News 9.
One witness later claimed they heard someone calling for help from the Hudson side of the Merrimack River that night. But that, too, remains unconfirmed. If you have any information about what happened to Michael McClain, please contact the Nashua Police Department at 603-594-3500. Even the smallest detail could bring answers, because Michael deserves to come home. On the 31st of January, 2018, a quiet walk in Hinchingbrook Country Park, Cambridgeshire, turned into something unforgettable. A dog walker was out enjoying the evening when they stumbled across something that would haunt them forever. Lying in the woods was the lifeless body of 20-year-old Sam Mechelewski. Police responded quickly to the 999 call. When they arrived, the scene was brutal. Sam had been beaten with a blunt object, later confirmed to be a baseball bat, and then stabbed multiple times with a sharpened blade. It was a violent, calculated attack. So, who was Sam? And why would anyone want to hurt him? CCTV footage gave the first clue. At 8 p.m., Sam was spotted inside a Sainsbury's supermarket, just hours before his death. Shortly after, he met with a man, one of his associates in the local drug scene. Sam had reportedly been making around £1,000 a week selling illegal substances. Roughly 30 minutes later, he left to meet two acquaintances, 24-year-old Jordan Shepard and 21-year-old Ashley White. The three were caught on surveillance footage, walking toward Hinchingbrook Country Park. But only two of them came back. Shepard and White left the park alone, and Sam was never seen alive again. What followed was a long, frustrating investigation. There were no eyewitnesses, no CCTV footage from inside the wooded area. Sam's phone was missing. The weapons used to end his life had vanished. But investigators got a break, thanks to one overlooked detail. Near Sam's body, they found a notebook. Inside were names and numbers, including those of Shepard and White. Turns out, Sam had occasionally stayed at Shepard's house in Chatteris. And shortly after Sam's death, Shepard began removing Sam's belongings, sending them to his family, and even getting rid of the mattress Sam had slept on. A search of the property turned up something important: Sam's missing phone. Fingerprint tests confirmed Shepard had handled it. Outside, investigators found Sam's birth certificate in the trash. And that's not all. A baseball bat was recovered, bearing traces of Sam's DNA. Then, the financials raised even more red flags. Both Shepard and White were seen spending large amounts of cash in the days after Sam's death, money that had belonged to him. The motive? Simple and sickening: jealousy. All three men had been selling drugs, but Sam was more successful, earning more, expanding faster. So, Shepard and White decided to eliminate the competition. In court, the two friends turned on each other, each one claiming the other was to blame. But the jury, they saw right through it. Jordan Shepard was sentenced to 28.5 years in prison. Ashley White received 29 years. Sam Mechelewski was just 20 years old. His life was cut short, not by a stranger, but by people he trusted, over money, status, ego. A devastating reminder that sometimes the biggest threats come from those closest to us. It was a quiet February morning in 2013, on the island of Guernsey, in the Channel Islands. 54-year-old Gillian Sarhas, a kind and reliable woman, was going about her day, just like she always did. She worked at Waitrose supermarket in the parish of St. Peter Port. And that morning, she was seen at home on Victoria Avenue around 6:15 a.m. She seemed calm. Nothing was out of the ordinary, but she would never be seen again. Later that day, at 8:20 a.m., Gillian was caught on CCTV shopping at the Alliance supermarket on Bobigny Road. She was dressed in a green coat with a fur-trimmed hood. No sign of stress, no panic, just going through her routine. That footage was the last confirmed sighting of her. When Gillian didn't show up for work, her friends and family started to worry. Authorities launched an immediate search around Victoria Avenue and nearby Le Foulon. They spoke to joggers, cyclists, drivers, and passers-by. Over 100 people. But no one had seen her. And then came two possible sightings. Two groups of witnesses came forward, separately, to report that they had seen Gillian near the Yacht Inn in St. Peter Port, close to the Space Youth Center. But these reports weren't volunteered. They only surfaced after police spoke directly to locals, and though the sightings were days apart, they were the only clues investigators had. Police searched everywhere, the bridge area of St. Sampson, where she was known to have visited, bodies of water near Vale Parish, ponds, coastal zones, and wooded paths. A helicopter scanned the terrain from above. Air search crews, civil protection units, and volunteers joined in. But not a single trace of Gillian was found. She hadn't left the island. Her passport, her travel documents, and her belongings were all still at home. There was no activity on her bank accounts, no sightings, no notes, no clues, just silence. Her family made multiple public appeals. Police asked residents to check their home CCTV, to review dashcam footage from that day. But nothing new ever surfaced. To this day, over a decade later, the case remains unsolved. If you have any information about what happened to Gillian Sarhas, no matter how small, please contact Guernsey Police at 725-111, because someone knows something, and Gillian deserves to come home.